It is a cold weekday morning in Gwinnett County, Georgia. A routine patrol officer is making his rounds through the parking lot of a Kroger grocery store. Nothing about the shift feels remarkable, until it does. The officer's eyes catch something strange. A man is walking out the automatic sliding doors. A massive man, well over 6 feet tall, built like a mountain, his frame so broad it blocks the pale winter light. And underneath his sweatpants, shapes, bulging, rectangular shapes. The unmistakable geometry of hidden items. The officer radios for backup. His eyes stay on the man. The man walks calmly, almost leisurely, across the parking lot toward a nearby gas station, as if the world isn't watching. He doesn't run. He doesn't hurry. He moves the way men move when they're used to being untouchable. Backup arrives. Officers approach. They place the 6'3", 300-pound man in double-locked handcuffs. When they run his name through the system, the screen lights up. Not one warrant, not two, 3 active warrants in the state of Georgia alone, and more in other states beyond its borders. The grocery store doesn't even want to press charges for the hidden items. But it doesn't matter anymore. The warrants speak for themselves. The man is loaded into a police cruiser and taken to jail. His name is Robert Chukwudimabin Kemdish. And once, not so long ago, the entire football world agreed he was going to be one of the greatest players who ever lived. Made $13 million in the league, and now stealing groceries. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And please subscribe to True Crime Zone, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. To understand how a man ends up in handcuffs in a grocery store parking lot, you have to go back to the beginning. And Robert and Kemdish beginning reads like the opening chapter of a great American dream. He was born on September 19, 1994, in Atlanta, Georgia, the son of Nigerian immigrants who had crossed an ocean to build a life of meaning and achievement in the United States. His father, Sundane Kemdish, was a cardiologist, a man who spent a professional life saving hearts. His mother, Beverly Kemdish, was a politician of consequence, a legislator who would eventually return to Nigeria to represent the Onitsha South constituency in the Anambra State House of Assembly. These were not people who accepted mediocrity. Education was not optional in the Kemdish household. Excellence was the baseline, not the ceiling. Robert grew up in Loganville, a suburb east of Atlanta, and attended Grayson High School. He had 2 older brothers, Brian and Denzel. It was Denzel who first pulled Robert toward football. When Robert was in 7th grade, he would go watch his big brother play, transfixed by the raw physical contact of the sport. At first, I tried to be a baseball player, Robert would later recall. And then my brother started playing football in 7th grade, and I started going to some of his games. I liked how physical it was. Basketball wasn't physical, and baseball wasn't physical. So Robert tried football, and football tried Robert back. Within months, coaches were watching him with wide eyes. The boy was a freak of nature, not merely tall or wide or fast, but all 3 at once, wrapped in a frame that suggested someone had engineered him in a laboratory for the express purpose of playing defensive end. By the time Robert Kemdish was a junior at Grayson High School, the superlatives had run out. He recorded 18 sacks and 17 rushing touchdowns. Yes, touchdowns, because coaches used him on offense too. He led Grayson to a 15-0 record, a Class 5A state championship, and a number 4 national ranking in the USA Today high school rankings. He was named the All-Class Player of the Year by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He won the Gwinnett Daily Post Offensive Player of the Year. He was named to the All-State team. His senior year added another 59 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks, while also helping his team win the Region 8-6A championship. He would finish his high school career with 41 career sacks. Across the country, recruiting analysts were nearly speechless. ESPN called him the Southeast's best high school football prospect since the early 1980s. He was ranked by both Rivals.com and Scout.com as not just the #1 defensive lineman in his class, but a consensus #1 overall player in the entire nation. He was only the 4th player since 2002 to hold that designation, alongside names like Jadeveon Clowney and Vince Young. He was, in every measurable way, the most coveted teenage football player in America. His sheer size, and he's so big and fast and agile, you don't see very many guys like that. Ole Miss safety Cody Pruitt. What followed was a spectacle. Every major college program in the country wanted Robert Nkemdish. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Clemson, Florida. His phone rang constantly. Coaches arrived unannounced at his practice. National media followed his every move. Robert later said he hated the spotlight, that the pressure was crushing, that being the number one recruit was less a blessing than a weight he hadn't asked to carry. In June 2012, he verbally committed to Clemson. Then in November, he decommitted, a move many attributed to his mother's influence. Given that Denzel was already playing linebacker at Ole Mississippi, Robert pushed back on that narrative firmly. Decommitting was not a family thing. It was my decision, he said. My parents did not even know. On National Signing Day, February 6, 2013, in a nationally televised ceremony where he wore a bow tie and suspenders, Robert Nkemdish committed to University of Mississippi, Ole Mississippi. He would play alongside his brother. His mother got her wish, even if Robert wouldn't admit it was hers. The entire Ole Miss fan base celebrated like they had won a championship, because signing the number one recruit in America felt exactly like that. Robert arrived at Ole Miss in 2013, carrying a load no 18-year-old should have to bear. He was not just a freshman. He was the single most anticipated player in the program's history, touted as the kind of player who could reshape the fortunes of the entire Rebels football program. His teammates felt it immediately. Offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil, himself a five-star recruit, described his first one-on-one drill against Robert in practice. When I say he bull rushed me, oh man, I felt all 310 pounds just coming at me, full of muscle, six-pack, and everything. I was like, I see why he's number one. I've never seen somebody so explosive coming off the ball in my life. His first season was solid. 34 tackles, 2 sacks, multiple quarterback hurries across 11 games. He was named freshman All-SEC. But it wasn't the earth-shattering debut the hype had demanded. Robert later admitted he had been swallowed by the pressure. He always worked hard. He just wasn't focused on the right goals, said wide receiver Laquan Treadwell. He had to learn that because he got caught up in the hype a little bit. Robert himself put it plainly. He had been drowning. I can play without my head spinning, he said, heading into his sophomore year. Everything is so calm and easy for me to pick up, and that's why I'm going to have a really big year. He kept that promise. As a sophomore in 2014, Nkemdish started every single game as Ole Miss's starting defensive tackle. The Rebels' defensive line became the best in the country, leading the nation in scoring defense at just 16 points per game allowed, and leading the SEC in tackles for loss. Robert himself registered 35 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. As a junior in 2015, he elevated even further. He earned first-team All-SEC honors from the Associated Press. He had 29 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. When Ole Miss shocked the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide 43-37 in Tuscaloosa in one of the most celebrated upsets in recent college football history, Nkemdish was in the heart of it. 6 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. NFL scouts circled. ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. listed him as a number 5 overall prospect in the entire 2016 draft class and the top defensive tackle on the board. Some teams were preparing to take him in the top 5. The ceiling seemed limitless. The trajectory was clear. And then came December 12, 2015. It was a Saturday night. The Grand Hyatt Atlanta in the Buckhead neighborhood, one of the most upscale districts in all of Atlanta. Robert Nkemdish was in his room on the 4th floor. What happened next would never be fully explained to the public's satisfaction. At approximately 11:18 p.m., Zone 2 police units received a call. A male had fallen from a hotel window. Officers arrived to find Robert Nkemdish on the ground outside the hotel, conscious, breathing, but confused. The Atlanta Police Department's incident report stated that it appeared Nkemdish had broken a window of his room, walked approximately 15 feet, climbed over a wall, and fallen approximately 15 feet to the ground below. A bush had broken much of the fall. He was taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, where he received stitches in his back and leg. His ankle was badly swollen. The 911 caller had described him as incoherent. Inside his hotel room, investigators found what they described as 7 rolled marijuana cigarettes. The room, according to police report, was in complete disarray. Robert Nkemdish was charged with marijuana possession. When police spoke to Nkemdish and the group of associates at the hotel, not one of them could explain why he had gone through the window. Robert himself told police he did not know how he had ended up on the ground. Reports began circulating that Nkemdish had been using synthetic cannabinoids, a class of chemical drugs that don't appear on standard drug tests, but are known to cause severe paranoia, hallucinations, and delusions. Multiple sources told outlets that he had become convinced someone was chasing him, and that conviction had driven him through a double-pane window and over a wall 4 stories above the street. His brother Denzel had reportedly had a similar episode earlier that same year, ending up on the roof of a townhouse, also convinced he was being pursued after smoking a substance later described as synthetic marijuana. Robert denied the synthetic drug reports publicly. In a statement released through Ole Miss, he said, "I want to apologize to Rebel Nation, my teammates, and my coaches for my actions last weekend. I made a mistake and put myself in an environment that does not reflect who I am as a person. Contrary to a report by Fox Sports, I did not use synthetic drugs. I realize the dangers of drugs and alcohol and regret the lapse in judgment. This does not reflect the core values that my mother and father instilled in our family. I am a very spiritual person, and drugs have no place in my belief system." He was suspended from the Sugar Bowl. The Ole Miss Rebels went to face Oklahoma State without one of their best players and lost 48-20. A future top 5 draft pick had just fallen 4 stories from a hotel window. The questions would never fully go away. Despite everything, the hotel, the suspension, the unresolved questions, the NFL draft was still his. The physical gifts were too rare, the potential too explosive for teams to walk away. On April 28, 2016, in Chicago at the NFL draft, the Arizona Cardinals selected Robert Nkemdish with the 29th overall pick in the first round. The Cardinals signed him to a 4-year contract worth $8.6 million, with $8.15 million guaranteed, and a signing bonus of $4.45 million. He was 21 years old, the son of Nigerian immigrants, the kid from Loganville, Georgia, who had wanted to be a baseball player until 7th grade. He was now a first-round pick of a professional football franchise. Every dream his parents had carried across the ocean felt, in that moment, like it had been worth the crossing. His rookie season in 2016 was almost non-existent. Injuries and struggles limited him to just 5 games, 1 tackle. In 2017, he played in 12 games, recording 11 tackles and a forced fumble. Progress, but not the dominance that had been anticipated. In 2018, he finally showed flashes of what everyone had believed he could be. Week 1, his first career sack. He finished the season with 32 tackles for 0.5 sacks and a forced fumble across games played, the best stretch of his professional career. For a brief period, it felt like the Robert Nkemdish everyone had been waiting for was finally arriving. Then came Week 14, a knee injury, season-ending surgery. Placed on injured reserve in December, the Cardinals declined his 5th-year option. On July 28, 2019, they released him with a failed physical designation. Before that release, there was another incident, one that added another layer to a story that was already complicated. On June 6, 2019, while still under contract with the Cardinals, Robert Nkemdish was arrested in Scottsdale, Arizona. He had been pulled over at 6:39 in the morning on Scottsdale Road, traveling 75 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Officers discovered there was an active traffic warrant for his arrest from Tempe. While processing his belongings, police found a credit card holder containing a trace amount of a white powdery substance. He told officers he had been heading to practice. The Cardinals had their last session of OTAs that same day. The team released a statement. The league was alerted. Nothing about it served the image of a man trying to rebuild his career. What follows in the life of Robert Nkemdish is a map of diminishing returns. Each destination a smaller stage than the one before. Each opportunity a quieter version of the promise that once had the whole country talking. The Miami Dolphins signed him in 2019 on a one-year deal. He played in games, made contributions. Then the NFL suspended him for 2 weeks in November 2019 for violating the league's substance abuse policy. He was reinstated. The Dolphins didn't bring him back. In April 2021, the Seattle Seahawks signed him. He was released in August, re-signed the practice squad the next day, promoted to the active roster in September, then released again. In July 2022, the San Francisco 49ers signed him. He was released in August before the season started. In January 2023, he signed with the Michigan Panthers of the United States Football League, the Spring Developmental League, a far cry from the NFL's grandest stages. He was released in April. In January 2024, he signed with the Edmonton Elks of the Canadian Football League. He played 4 games, recorded 7 tackles and 2 sacks, and was placed on the injured list. The Elks released him in July. Total NFL career statistics: 59 tackles, 11 QB hits, for 0.5 sacks across 38 games over parts of several seasons. A career that burned with possibility and never became the fire it was supposed to be. This dude was ranked the #1 athlete in high school at one point. A fan, upon learning of his arrest, 2026. The football was gone. What remained was a man trying to navigate life after the roar of the crowd, and seemingly struggling to find his footing on the other side of it. On March 1st, 2025, Robert Nkemdish was arrested in Kennesaw, Georgia, by Cobb County Police. The charges were serious: disorderly conduct, driving under the influence, driving with suspended license, and driving without proof of insurance. The incident reportedly began at a bowling alley, a Bolero in Kennesaw, where Nkemdish allegedly threatened the manager. When police arrived, they found him in his vehicle in the parking lot. He was released on bond. The case remained open. 4 months later, on July 23rd, 2025, he was arrested again. This time, the Gwinnett County Police took him into custody for allegedly shoplifting a bottle of wine valued at approximately $17 from a gas station in Beaufort, Georgia. $17. A man who had signed a contract worth more than $8 million guaranteed, reduced to being arrested for a bottle of wine that cost less than the tip on an NFL player's dinner. The pattern was no longer possible to ignore. And then came the morning that would close this chapter of his story publicly and painfully. An officer conducting a routine business area check outside a Kroger grocery store in Gwinnett County spotted the massive, unmistakable frame of Robert Nkemdish exiting the store. Inside his sweatpants, many large objects, square and rectangular shapes consistent with concealed grocery items. The officer called for backup. He watched. Nkemdish walked toward a gas station. Officers approached. They placed him in double-locked handcuffs, standard procedure for someone of his size and strength. The items were no longer in his pants when they confronted him. But when investigators searched the parking lots of the Kroger and the nearby gas station, they found what had been hidden: frozen food items, candy bars, almond milk. The grocery store declined to press charges for the stolen goods. But when officers ran his name, 3 active warrants in Georgia alone came back on the screen, and additional warrants in other states beyond Georgia. County officials requested a hold be placed on him. Robert Nkemdish was arrested and booked into jail. The perishable items recovered from a parking lot had to be thrown away. Went from NFL contracts to stealing groceries? In all seriousness, I hope he gets help. A fan, it is easy, dangerously easy, to reduce a man like Robert Nkemdish to a cautionary tale, to a punchline about wasted potential and squandered millions. Social media did it in seconds. Comment sections filled with variations of the same refrain. He made $13 million and couldn't afford groceries. But the truth of a person is never that simple. And the story behind a fall is never as clean as the fall itself. Robert Nkemdish came from parents who demanded excellence. A cardiologist father, a legislator mother, a household that gave him everything it could: intellect, ambition, discipline, faith. He was a 3-sport athlete, a straight-line runner, a thinker who once told reporters before the NFL draft that he hoped to buy a panther as a pet, and who was earnest enough about the idea that people remembered it years later. He grew up with his mother returning to Nigeria when he was still a teenager. She left to pursue her political career in 2009. His father worked at a hospital. A high school defensive line coach named Lenny Gregory became his legal guardian during those years, guiding him to pressure cooker being America's most recruited high school player. He arrived at Ole Miss as the most anticipated recruit in the program's history, a responsibility so outsized for a teenager that even he admitted he had been crushed by it. He bounced between teams in the NFL, never able to stay healthy long enough to build a consistency that great players require. His body failed him repeatedly. His choices compounded his difficulties. The substance issues that first surfaced in that Atlanta hotel room in December 2015 never seemed to fully leave his story. The suspension from the NFL in 2019, the DUI arrest in 2025, the repeated encounters with law enforcement in the state where he was born and raised. Something was clearly wrong. Something beyond the simple arithmetic of bad decisions. The fans who commented hoping he would get help, they were seeing something real, even to the shock of the headlines. Robert Chukwudumabin Kemdish, his full name, given to him by Nigerian parents who carried the weight of a culture that says a name means something, that the words we are called shape who we become. He was called, for years, the greatest, the number one, the future. As of March 2026, he is 31 years old. He has outstanding warrants across multiple states. No court date has been formally announced for Kroger incident. The legal proceedings from his March 2025 DUI arrest remain active. His football career, from the Canadian Football League to the USFL, has come to what appears to be its quiet, uncelebrated end. He is not in prison. He has not been formally sentenced in a final, conclusive legal resolution. But he is a man moving through a legal system that has caught him multiple times in just over a year. And the trajectory of that movement is one that demands attention. There are people who knew Robert and Kemdish, coaches, teammates, the men who watched him dominate in practice and on the field, who still speak of him with something close to awe. His former Ole Miss defensive coordinator Dave Womack put it plainly: when you have to account for Robert and Kemdish, you're already playing one man down. He was that kind of force. That man still exists, somewhere inside the 31-year-old standing in a Georgia parking lot in handcuffs. Whether he can find his way back to himself, that is the question that no police report, no legal proceeding, and no arrest record can answer. That answer belongs only to Robert and Kemdish, the number one player in America, a first-round NFL pick, a man arrested for frozen food and candy bars. This is not just a sports story. This is a human story. Tell us in the comment section what you think. Thank you for watching.